Said it is election eve. All of these races, including, of course, the presidential campaigns, all coming down to this final push. This afternoon, Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon was talking. He talked about election rules, the process, and we wanted to share just a little bit of what he had to say about ballot counting and the timing of results.
We report the results that we get from the counties, and we expect that we'll be getting results fairly soon after polls close at 8 p.m. throughout the evening and the overnight hours. So I believe that in Minnesota, we should expect to have nearly all results in before folks sit down to breakfast on the morning of Wednesday, November 6th. That has been our standard over the years. Sometimes there are some outliers. It happens. There might be a county here or a county there that's a little bit late. But overall, if you look at the broad sweep of the past few years and decades, by the time Minnesotans are eating breakfast, they should know all or substantially all of the results in Minnesota. But I have to emphasize, particularly in light of the intensity around this election, that is not going to be the case in many states. And that's because their state laws build in extended counting. Again, in Minnesota, by breakfast, we're almost certainly going to have all or substantially all of the results. But that is not the case in a number of states, including presidential battleground states. So, for example, some states accept ballots that have been postmarked by Election Day. And other states have a rule where they can't even start counting absentee ballots until after the polls have closed. Again, there are several other states in these categories, and they are following their state's laws. So in these cases, results that are not available right after the close of polls is not proof of a problem. It is proof of the opposite, that they are dedicated election workers following the laws of their state.
Okay, there's a lot to sort through here today. So we asked political analyst Blois Olson to walk us through some of it. Thanks for being here. Yeah. Appreciate it. So I do want to get back to what Steve Simon was saying about the timing of results in just a minute. But first, I wanted to ask you about turnout, early voter turnout. We saw, I think it was North Carolina, record numbers, 4.2 million people, with many of them being on the western side of the state where they were hit by Helene. So what are you making of this surge of early voters?
Well, look, I think it's behavior change. After the pandemic, people are used to voting early. Many states have changed their laws. Minnesota is about double what it was, a little more than double, 2016. Okay. So I look at it. I think North Carolina is emerging here in the late day as a really big, clear bellwether, because you have a rural state, you have new growth cities with strong suburban populations of independent voters, a lot of migrants there. So I think we're going to learn a little bit about national trends when we start to see North Carolina. Interesting.
Okay. We hear a lot about, from both the campaigns and polling, that this is a toss-up. It is so tight. But I wanted to talk specifically about polls. They haven't always been the most reliable measure for us. So how should we be consuming polls?
So first of all, look at state by state of the battleground states. That's really what matters. National polls are really, they're not a factor now. They'll tell us something afterwards, but they're probably not going to tell us anything before. And then I tell people to look at the poll of polls. There's 4, 5, 6, 7 polls in every state. Last week in Minnesota, we had one poll that showed Harris up by 8, another poll that showed her up by 4. So that puts it at about 6. But that could be Trump up by 1, that could be, so you have to look at the average over time. And then look, if we've had this 4 to 6% of undecideds and they hadn't decided until the last few weeks, they're going to break usually one way or the other. They're not going to split. They're going to break one way or the other.
I wanted to ask you about these undecideds, these swing voters, because when the margins are so slim like this, what do we know about them, if anything?
So I look at it as, where do they come from? First and foremost, I think non-college male voters are one block. They show up traditionally for Trump. In fact, they show up in numbers that other Republicans haven't seen. Here in Minnesota, it's about 250,000 more voters than traditional presidential races. The other block is suburban independent women, and this is the first presidential election after Dobbs. They're going to have, that's going to be a motivating factor. And then I think the biggest outlier is 18 to 24-year-olds. They are the most unpredictable at showing up. They tend to vote Democratic, But even there, depending on the part of the country, they have more energy for one candidate or the other. And if they show up, so it's basically college students or, in the workforce, but not fully career driven yet.
We saw RFK bow out and then throw his support behind Donald Trump. What, if anything, will that do?
Depends on the state. He's still on the ballot in a couple states.
Right, Michigan being one of them.
Yeah,
I believe.
Michigan being a big one. 1 to 2 points could make all the difference in the world in Michigan for the Harris-Trump race. I think it overall helped Trump nationally, but he's still got to try to bring some of that energy out. I think that ultimately comes down to the top of the ticket. It's about the candidate. It's not about the surrogates.
Okay, we talked about North Carolina being a bellwether. Let's talk about Pennsylvania for a minute. A lot of political analysts believe that the road to the White House will go straight through Pennsylvania, and that will be the end-all be-all. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it does all come down to Pennsylvania. I also think Pennsylvania is going to be the messiest. So let viewers know, have a lot of patience with Pennsylvania right now. Yeah. They have some of the most kind of detailed when you can count, how you can count, when the ballots come in. And I can't even keep up with them because some of them are county by county.
Sure.
And so I think that's going to be the Georgia or the Arizona of this election.
I did see Josh Shapiro, governor. I think he was talking about how 4 years ago they stopped counting at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And he said that's not going to happen again.
They're going to keep counting.
They're going to keep going. So what took 3-4 days before may be moving quicker this time. Results, we talk a little bit about that. We heard Steve Simon talk about specifically in Minnesota what to expect. Again, kind of tempering this for our viewers who are going to be wanting to know results as soon as possible. What should we expect overall? Everyone wants to know, Blois, how long is it going to take? How long is this going to take?
I think in Minnesota, I think Steve Simon's right. We're going to know Wednesday the general way Minnesota works. We have some legislative races. People are watching closely, U.S. Senate race, congressional races. We'll know Minnesota. But I think we're probably to the weekend at least before we know other states. But having said that, if you have a North Carolina and a Georgia or an Arizona, and we're still waiting for Pennsylvania, it could still be enough for one of the candidates to get to 270 before Pennsylvania comes in. So there is a sense that this race could be as tight as we think it is, or a few 100,000 votes could flip quickly, and then it'd be a landslide one way or the other.
Incredible. I mean, thinking back to the elections you've covered, you're shaking your head a little bit. This is just an amazing moment in history.
It is. I started in 1998 when Jesse Ventura won.
Oh, sure.
And then 2000 was the Gore Bush recount.
That's right.
So I've seen these wild ones before. I'll just do my yoga breathing and relax.
I think that's a good advice for all of us to do some yoga breathing through all of this. So great. Thank you, Blois. We really appreciate you being here with us live today and talking us through some of this. And we look forward to talking to you throughout the process of counting up these ballots as well.